This is episode 17 of the You're Doing Great Mom podcast. I'm Dr. Marian Shiozawa. This is part 2 from last week's conversation with Dr. Kelly McLaughlin and Dr. Sarah Farrant. If you haven't listened to part 1, definitely jump over there first and have a listen. Then pop back over here to continue the awesome conversation. Dr. Kelly and Dr. Sarah are both powerhouse women chiropractors, also both moms who live inspiring lives, impacting their communities and other people around the world. And at the end of the show, make sure you listen to how to get in touch with these amazing women. Let's get right down to it. Well, we're back here with Dr. Sarah and Dr. Kelly. Sarah and Kelly, welcome back for part 2 of our awesome episode series.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me back.
Thank you for having me too. I'm excited.
Yeah, this is I'm very excited too. So we were recording together, was it 3 weeks ago? I think it was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was almost 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Goes by fast. And,
yes.
And we felt that we wanted to continue our awesome conversation about the benefits of chiropractic, and we were just getting into how we got into chiropractic and how it's affected our lives. So we wanted to really just continue the conversation because there's just so much to say. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys wanted to pick up from the conversation, but we really wanted to get into how it's affected so many lives, from our experience in practice, and also just what we're up to and what we're doing. So Sarah, if you can just remind or just go over what you do currently right now and how long you've been a chiropractor, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you, Marianne. So I've been a chiropractor for how long is it? 16 years. And I am not currently in practice, but I choose kind of like what your vision was that you were sharing, Marianne, before we came to the call. And you were sharing how you want to be able to educate the public more. That's more of what I do. So I speak in different places around the world to help educate people within the public to understand chiropractic a lot more. So we have a business at the moment called Vital Mums, which is going under a rebrand. And really our tagline for all of that, Marianne, is we provide vital tools for generational change in health. And what that means is that not only are we educating the parents, but we're also educating the children and the grandparents, because we have lots of grandparents that come to us that say, I want to teach my children how to be a better parent, or how to, give this particular health advice, be that nutrition, be that other areas, for example, medications, etc., to my children. So we noticed that the age groups associated with our business was ranged from 80 to 21. So the youngest one is 21 that has a child within our reach. So at the moment, that's what I'm doing, and that's what I'm jazzed up about, is to help people understand health from a different perspective and provide those people with the opportunity to change their future generation within the family.
Yeah, that's great. That's really what we need to do, just to shift perspective in health, and that's awesome. I love it. And Kelly,
thank you.
Yeah, Kelly, what? And you're practicing now, Kelly, right?
I'm in practice now. Yep.
Yeah.
I've been in practice for 15 years, and I have practiced in the UK with my husband for our own practice for the last 6 years. So we opened our practice mostly because we felt that there wasn't anybody providing what we felt we could provide to the public, which was really a different, in the ilk of what Sarah's talking about, was a different way to approach involve, obviously using chiropractic as a lifestyle choice within that, but also empowering people to make different choices about their health, but also then providing them with the information and the support to be able to do that. So we see lots of families in the practice. We have 65% of our clients are families, and they'll often use us as the first kind of port of call. If the child, for example, falls off the bed or something, like they'll phone up and they'll say, can we just get them checked? And they'll come in, and then, if obviously something's quite serious and there's blood involved or those kind of things, and they might still go down the traditional route, but we kind of work with them up to that point, so that when those things are created, there's a different thought process behind the health challenges that the families have. So that's where I guess our passion is and our love is at the moment. And we see from pregnant ladies, we see lots of people, but we have a lot of pregnant ladies and babies and children in the practice.
Great. Yeah. So thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Sarah. One of the things that I get asked a lot about when I have mothers come in, or I have someone contact me inquiring about chiropractic, a very common question is, well, why would my kid need chiropractic care? Or, my kid doesn't have back pain. So do you guys get that question? And why is it so beneficial? And I mean, I want to expand on this. And then why would what's so great about chiropractic, and because I dedicate my whole work and passion on this, because I really do think that it's so great. It's enough to change the world, really. But in your words, like, what is it, to explain anyone who's not really sure about what chiropractic is, especially for families, and how does it benefit children?
Marianne, that's a really great question. For us in our practice, I think there's two spectrums with chiropractic. There's one spectrum that has we're going to get sick people well. This is you're coming in for something, to get something, to take something away. So people are actually carrying their prior model of allopathic care into the chiropractic arena. And the challenge then is to how do we have them look at health in a different way, so they're not carrying those preconceived ideas that when you go to the chiropractor because of pain, because that's the allopathic model, right? So when we break down the word allopathic, we're looking at someone who remains passive. So you go to someone to get something, to take something away, whatever that is. That can be a prescription medication, an over-the-counter medication, or a scheduled injections. We're running from a fear-based model that I have something, it's not meant to be there, therefore take it away. So when people come into our practice, we educate from the other end of this continuum, or this spectrum, let's say, and that is the healthy approach to life. Health being, within the word health, there is the word heal. Health, when we look at the etymology of that word, actually means whole. So we look at the full spectrum of life. And I think we touched on it last time, and my memory might be a little rusty there, Marianne, but I thought that I touched on it last time. When we look at the different levels and different hierarchies of the body, we go from, systems. If we go from outside the body into the body, or a deep dive into the body, we go from systems to organs, to tissues, to cells, to organelles, to atoms, to subatomic particles, to vibrations, to energy, and then to light. So when we really break down our human body, we have a positive and we have a negative charge, just like we have on a cell membrane where we have sodium and potassium pump. One's a positive and one's a negative charge. The body is designed that way to constantly keep us in this state of balance, and the system that we use for that is this homeostatic mechanism within our body. So if we look at that understanding of the human body, then we look at what health is by definition. It means whole, and health the hidden word within health means heal, then the spectrum that we come from is completely different to this pain-orientated model. So where I like to start with people is really reframing, well, what is health, and where does health come from? And if we can start to break down those beliefs about what health is, because most people think it's about how you feel, right?
Right.
If you're not feeling fine, then you must be feeling bad. Therefore, you got to do something about that bad feeling. However, what happened in this world of positivity, what we've done is, and Norman Vincent Peale brought that in, which was the whole power of positive thinking and positive movement, which I'm okay with, but to a degree when it negates how we're really feeling, i.e., if we don't have a conversation about the bad, let's inverted commas, the bad things that may be happening in one's life that have been created in one's life for a reason, then we're missing one half of what is essentially as a whole, because we want to go to someone to take something to take that away. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So when we have a parent that is wanting to have their child checked, then the conversation isn't not necessarily about, my child doesn't have back pain. We have parents saying, I want my kid to be the best that they can be, because that's how we position ourselves within our market here on the island. And I think that carries volumes when there are people out there that are doing that particular approach to health, but we're doing something completely different. And if you're doing the same thing over and over again and nothing's changing, then it's time to try something different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And anything to add, Kelly?
Yeah, it's very similar for us in the sense of we don't necessarily get parents asking us why they would bring their children. Normally, because we have lots of kids in the office, from really brand new babies through to teenagers really, but children that people would sort of comment upon, it's more of a curious reason. They sort of see kids get adjusted, and it may be that they don't necessarily have children themselves, or they've come in, like Sarah said, on a particular spectrum for something, and we've given them our message in the way that we can deliver it, but they're where they're at and they've come in for a reason, and they're quite intrigued as to why the children would be getting adjusted. But because we've spoken to them about the intelligence of the body and how the body heals itself and how the body works, it kind of makes perfect sense to them. Then when we explain to them, we say, well, sure, obviously chiropractic has this reputation for back pain and headaches, but it's such a tiny little thing. It's really about optimizing your potential as a human, as a person. And if the main system that runs your body is your brain and your nervous system, and if that isn't functioning without interference, then your body can't express itself to the fullest. So we use terms like that a lot with people from the moment that they step into the office, and it's not unusual for them to hear those terms. So then when they see the children being adjusted, it makes sense to them. And the comments that are often usually what we hear is, I wish I'd known about it sooner. I wish I'd known that there was a different way to do things. I wish I'd known that I'd come in here sooner. I'm sure that everybody, all the chiropractors that do listen to this will hear that too. And it's not an uncommon thing to hear. But it's not, we don't provide a service as a treatment for anything. We provide a service to work with that individual so that they can be the best version of themselves. And because that's our focus from the word go, and because that's our difference, our standpoint when they first come to us, it's quite easy for us to, I suppose, integrate the children and why children would be adjusted into that. And often it's quite cool. We've had a couple of clients who have been in the office with their children, getting them checked, and there's a little boy who immediately springs to mind, who's 5.5, and he's been checked since he was 3 weeks old, and he's been checked every week since that age. And his mum's such a she's a vigilante really for chiropractic. And people have said to her on a couple of occasions, your children are getting adjusted. And so she does the work. She's such an advocate, and she kind of understands it in her way, which isn't a chiropractic confusing words, and trying to explain ourselves around things. She's just really quite succinct with what she says, and that, for me, that works really well as well, having those clients kind of speaking the message for us.
And do you see when mothers do understand that, when they really do have that discovery of chiropractic and how healthy their children are, do you see a clear difference between a child who's been getting adjusted from, like you said, that 5-year-old boy was 3 weeks old? Is there a clear difference between a child who's been adjusted since birth and a child who has not been adjusted?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without Absolutely. A doubt. It's so clear. It's like saying, oh, I'm going to drive a car as, completely refreshed and, I've eaten well and I've had a really good sleep and I'm really focused and the light's good and everything else, and I'm really in charge of this vehicle that I'm driving, and then saying, I've just drunk a bottle of wine and I'm going to get behind the wheel. Like, I know that's quite an extreme example, but it's such a contrast for the children that I see in our office, for the children who have had that ability to be checked regularly and have that clear connect. People who are what I call muffled, the kids that we see that are older who are muffled, because things are disconnected.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
It's strange. After we got off the call last time, I realised that we didn't even kind of touch on subluxation or the stress in the nerve system or how our body creates these things. And I said to my husband at the end of it, I said it was great. We spoke a lot about life and health. I said, but I feel that it didn't even almost come to my thought process, because it's such an obvious thing for me that people, if they knew what we knew, that lovely quote, if they knew what they knew, they would do what we did. And it's so obvious that your nerve system is so important to how your life runs, that you would have a chiropractor work with you if you understood the importance of that.
Yeah.
And I think what's great too, just going on from what Kelly said, Marianne, that I show this picture, and I don't know, hopefully your audience is going to be able to have a visual of this picture, and Marianne for yourself, but it's a picture of an old woman in a new woman, a young woman and a young woman in an old woman. Do you know that? It's a psychology picture.
Yeah.
Do you know that picture? Yeah.
It's an optical illusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time when I, in various places when I speak, that's one of the classic pictures that I always use. And I always use that one because there's going to be a certain portion of the audience that can see the old woman, and there's going to be a certain portion of people that can see the young woman, and there's going to be a certain portion of people that are able to flick between the two. But if you can only see the old woman and you can't see the young woman, or you can only see the young and you can't see the old, you're going to have someone want to point out to you what the young woman or the old woman looks like. But once you've got that, it's really hard from your brain perspective. It's really hard to only see just one again. So all of a sudden you've expanded your world, and now you've got essentially two options. And then I could stand there on a stage and go, okay, now flick between the two, because you can do it quite easily. And it's the same thing with health. If we have people coming from this allopathic health approach, being that you go to someone to get something, to take something away, and then they kind of move across to what would be the alternative health approach. And for years and years and years, that's where chiropractic sat, in this alternative health approach. And it was about 6 or so years ago that I looked at that and that particular approach of where chiropractic sat and thought, no, that's not where we as a health profession actually sit, that we actually sit somewhere else. And so I started to write down all the things that were associated with chiropractic and the alternative health approach and the allopathic approach, and started to pluck things out and move things around. and then came up with a new name. And the new name that I gave it started with A because I wanted another A. So there's the allopathic approach, which I mentioned before, which is where you remain passive, pathic being passive, remaining passive. And then there's the alternative health approach. Now, the guise of the alternative health approach and the various health professions that sit in that particular approach is not really dissimilar to the allopathic health approach, where native or alternative, native, most people think it means natural and organic and of the earth, etc. But in the etymology dictionary, health actually means offering a choice. So here we have this allopathic health approach. One of the easiest places to jump ship then is to go to the alternative health approach because it still looks the same. They still speak a similar language. They're still giving a treatment for something. Therefore, they're taking something away. They're just giving you choice. And the choice is there are a number of different health professions that sit under that banner that you can go to in order to get that. One of which, for example, would be a naturopath, but you're still going to, instead of getting an aspirin, you'll get willow bark, right, for instance. And then there was this third health approach that I created by design, which I called the alternate. And it is a completely different approach. Think of them kind of like a triangle with health in the middle. That once you know, like the young woman and the old woman, once you know what they are and what they do, then I call it, you kind of become like a health slider. You can move into the middle of that triangle where health is, from many different angles, one of which can be allopathic if you know when you want to use that, one of which can be alternative if you know when you want to use that, and the other one which you can use consistently, regularly, weekly for the whole of your life is the alternate health approach, where nate means inborn. So I think when you have the power to know the differences in those health approaches, just like when as simple as the young woman and the old woman, then you have a whole other health arena available to you at the drop of a hat. And I think that's really, really empowering for the mothers to be in a position like that. But again, if you don't know, then you don't know what you don't know, because no one has either pointed it out to you or you haven't asked a question to help open that door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. That's a really great way to put it, because you just can't unlearn it. You can't not know what you've already learned. You can't not unlearn balance on a bike.
No, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if did I say that right? You just cannot. You know, once you've got balance on a bike, if you haven't ridden a bike in 5 years and you get on a bike after 5 years, you're not going to fall. You're going to ride the bike.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But what's interesting about that is that I saw a YouTube video a while ago of a guy who had turned his wheel around and was pretty much riding his bike backwards. He had to relearn the whole of his neurology pathways in order to ride this bike in a different way. So again, that's just a great example that you use there of, it's just about taking the time to expand someone's world in how they do or how they see a concept such as health that has been around for years and years and decades, hundreds, centuries, and looking at it from a different perspective. Yeah. And it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And people really want to know this information. They just, that's something that we see weekly with new clients, is like people are really, really thirsty for this information. They just, like Sarah just said, they just don't know what they don't know. They know they don't know something. They just don't know what it is, and they don't know where they go to find that. And chiropractors are in this amazing position where we have that information to be able with people. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge responsibility as well, which I feel shouldn't be taken lightly, but it's it's a real gift and it's a privilege. Mm-hmm. And people can't get what we can give to people elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that raises something really great there, because that brings up for me the whole conversation about self-responsibility. And I think as the allopathic health approach as it's starting to implode on itself, and more people are looking for that level of self-care, which coincides with self-responsibility, like I'm going to take my health back into my own hands, then we're the perfect health profession to be there to meet them at that door to say, come over here. Because when you look at those 3 health approaches that I was just talking about, and they're not models of care, they are literally 3 health approaches, but there's thousands of health professions. But when we look at the allopathic health approach and you're remaining passive within that, then there is no sense of self-responsibility. I'm going to go to you, you're going to tell me what I've got wrong, you're going to give me something, I'm going to take that and it's going to disappear. That's called a treatment, where treat means in its shortest form, it's creating an illusion that something doesn't exist anymore. And then when we go to the alternate health approach, where chiropractic sits comfortably in this health approach, there is a level of self-responsibility. So if you can tap into that sense of self-responsibility that everybody is searching for, then that positions chiropractic in a way healthier arena to be able to meet those people, where they're at, and as they're exiting this and mass exiting out of this allopathic approach, then come over here. We've got a great message and a lot of self-responsibility that goes with that. So which really begs the question then: does life happen to us, or do we create our circumstances? Because when we look at people in business and they're running their own business, like all of us are on this call and other people, beyond this call, that if you're running your own business, then the buck stops with you. There is a sense of ownership and responsibility that you have in which to steer that ship in the direction that you want. You got to, pay bills. Basically, you're keeping it afloat and you're keeping it running. Yeah. However, when we look at health, and people are interpreting their own health, well, there tends to be no self-responsibility, because they want to go to someone to get something, to take something away, or someone to tell them what's wrong with them. Whereas when you look at a person that's in business or even in a job, there's a sense of responsibility that goes with doing that role. But in health, we don't have that role, apparently. So the question, I think, that's the elephant in the room is, do we create our circumstances within our life, in all areas of our life, or is life happening to us? And of course, for me, my answer is that we create everything. We create all the way down to the disharmony, the dis-ease within our body, to the diseases within our body, to the little things that happen from car accidents to whatever that may be. And that's all created by ourselves and our own psyche and our own circumstances, and through the decisions or the choices that we make as we walk through life. And that's a really different conversation than one that would be that life's happening to you.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot. So, I mean, I'm sure, Marianne and Sarah, I hope that you would agree as well. It's like people are happy to take ownership of the common cold, for example. It's like, oh yeah, no, I haven't been resting as well and I haven't done this. But when it becomes like to the bigger stuff, it's like, oh no, it just happened to me. So there's that sense of the fact that they feel that they understand that they create their health. But when it really comes to the tough stuff where they have to make those decisions and really take that responsibility, then it gets deflected. And there was a study, I think Liam was telling me, in 2015, New York University did a study, and they said that I think it was over 90% of chronic lifestyle diseases, so the 4 big ones, the stroke, the heart disease, the cancers, and the breathing difficulties, 90% were lifestyle related. And so that's the medical profession now saying to us, okay guys, you are creating this, you have this ability to change your health. But the challenge with that is that they don't necessarily know then where to go to get the information and support to be able to do that, because it's still a thought process that lends itself to a sick care model, which, as Sarah has just said, is failing dramatically, which is why people are exiting it en masse and looking for something else. particularly for children and in pregnancy is what I'm seeing now. People are asking a lot more questions. Because it's almost like when it's not with themselves, it's like with themselves, I feel like people will often kind of just go along with things, but when it's then the children and then they have that response, or they feel they have a responsibility for the child to help them make decisions, it then becomes a different conversation. And that's often a way that we can navigate that really nicely to have a different thought process about something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'll give a little example that might help kind of clarify, or not clarify, but explain a little bit more about this whole, creating and getting situation. And it happened a couple of days ago with Anae, our youngest, who's 10, and she was at netball, and it's getting cold here, and she didn't have a jumper on, and I think she sneezed or something, and someone said, "Oh, aren't you cold? Why don't you put a jacket on?" One of her friends, and she said, "No, I'm not cold." She goes, "Well, yeah, put a jacket." The friend said, "Put a jacket on, you'll get a cold." And they looked and said, "You don't get a cold. I can't get a cold from not having a jacket on." She said, "You create a cold." And this other couple of girls that were there were absolutely indignant that, "No, you don't. Create a cold." "What do you mean you create a cold?" "No, you get a cold." And then they turned to the coach and said, "Hey, coach, do we get colds from not having our our jackets on and being out in the cold?" And the coach said, "Yes, of course you can." And I was like, it's a classic example. It's around us everywhere that we are being indoctrinated with this particular system of understanding health from this allopathic, approach. And she, true to Anae's form, she just dug her heels in. She said, "No, you create it. I can't get a cold." So she was clear, which was great. I just said to her, "Well, awesome. You educated, some girls, and you planted some seeds. Whether they get it now or they get it later, is neither here nor there. You just, you spoke your truth and you said what you wanted to say." So it goes back then, when I think about those kids in the park, back to what I was saying with our interpretation of health and how we see it. Really goes back to what was happening in the family from a really young age that has effect on those generational changes. So another example for you, Marianne, and I know Kelly's probably heard this one quite a few times, but it had to do with myself, and I got a bike at Christmas. It was a new Butte yellow bike, and I wanted to ride it around to my friend's place. It was on Christmas morning that I got it. It was Boxing Day that I went round to my friend's place, Mandy, and I rode round to her place. She and I went riding on our bikes, and as I rode back, I was kind of testing the skill of the bike and myself on the bike, and went down this hill, didn't have my brakes on. The pedal got caught on the gutter, and I came off second best. Grazes on my elbow, all over my knees, hobbled all the way home, walked up the driveway, went in the back door, crying my eyes out. And Mum's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Because, of course, that's languaging, right? What's wrong? And then I said, I've fallen off my bike. And, of course, she's seen blood pouring out of my knee. And she's picked me up, taken me straight round to the bathroom, sit me on the side of the bath, gone to the medicine cabinet, taken out a cotton wool ball, a Band-Aid, and some mercurochrome and a sponge. So the first thing she's done is she's, knelt down and she's taken the blood off my knee with the conversation or saying, this shouldn't be there. Oh dear, what's wrong? So she's planting in the seed in my head that blood's not good. It shouldn't be there. And then she's, cleaned it all up. And as she's peeled off the Band-Aid, she's gone to stick it on my knee. And she says, "There you go, darling. This will make it feel better." So not only is that ingrained in me from just one particular, episode of challenge that happened in my life, but on every single one after that, that's the common routine. We're going to go and do something to take whatever it was away in order to have you feel better. So I call that classic family health recipe, that it's not necessarily what is being even said by my mum, but the actions that she has just displayed to me throughout her lifetime in the best parenting and mothering that she could do, modeled to me that those situations are beyond my control and they shouldn't be there, and therefore I need to take them away. So in other words, kids learn from their parents via the actions and observations they make of what they do and what they say. So another example of that would be in the kitchen. Let's say you've got a family health recipe that you love cooking. You do not need to open a recipe book to do that because it's been passed down from your mum via what she did and the actions that she took and the observations you made of that particular recipe getting made. So let's say, Marianne, you take one of your kids into the kitchen, you've got a recipe that you know off by heart, you start putting it together, and you then automatically, by, osmosis, for want of a word, you seamlessly educate your child on what this recipe is. And it's no different when we look at health. So that child will grow up knowing what that recipe is and not having to look at a book. And therefore, if we're using that example in health, she'll also grow up knowing what health is because she doesn't have to look at a book. She doesn't have to open it. It's just been taught to her through the actions and observations that you have made as a parent. So and I think that's really, really powerful to help parents really kind of wind back that clock. Well, what you were taught is what you're now instilling in your children, from the language that you use to the observations that they're making of you, the actions that you take as well. And if we can help parents to notice that, to see that, to help kind of peel away those layers, then it positions the child in a much in a very different position going forward through their life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting because it's kind of like this cycle from generation to generation, and it's about putting the stick in the wheel spoke, to stop that cycle, to have a shift, kind of like shifting the railroad track to the lifestyle of the alternate, as you say. I love that lifestyle of chiropractic, where it is a practice, a lifestyle practice of regularly being responsible and taking your health back. Because I think that just in this society, what's going on is such a huge amount of fear because of what just generally people don't know that they don't know. And so I think that with health, you look at the people always fear the worst in terms of their body. And when there is a misunderstanding or an unknown of how the body is a self-organizing, intelligent, self-healing body, that's just something that's not understood. And so there's fear. And so I find that it's such a wonderful, refreshing thought to be able to break that cycle of and unlearn, have parents unlearn what these practices, because it is such an automatic thing. You break, you fall and you start bleeding, and of course it's going to hurt, and you see the child that's crying and they are saying, "Mommy, mommy," and then of course, like, the mother's going to say, because she learned it from her mother, what's wrong? And it's this reactionary type of being with your child. And so we're so used to using those words, and as opposed to saying, "Oh, let me see, what did you do?" It's a completely different reaction. You're going to react because you don't want your child to be hurt, and be in pain. But when my kids, people might think I'm cruel, because when my kids start bleeding, or when they show me they've got a boo-boo, or it's like, okay, so the blood is there for a purpose, and they look at me like, well, mommy, it's cut. I'm like, well, that's unfortunate. It's like, I'm sorry that happened, but you people get cut all the time, but actually your body is so resilient and so strong, and that blood is there for a purpose. It's healing. What's in that drop of blood? And they're like, no. And and so just teaching them the basics of how amazing their body is just the start of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And which leads me to this. I was thinking, Kelly, when you were talking about subluxation, like I've got this friend of mine who lives down the street, and I've been adjusting her for a while, and she kind of just asked me this question because I was assuming that she understood, but when she asked me this question of, well, why I would never think about how an adjustment would help my pregnancy, or she just didn't really get it. And she just asked, well, I wouldn't understand, like, how would the nerves, she just didn't put it together, because I feel like I say enough to educate and teach people what's actually happening. And then I was like, oh gosh, I really didn't explain myself well enough. And so it was like this gap, that I haven't successfully filled in educating people. Why is it, like, what is the subluxation? Why is it what is it about the adjustment, the chiropractic adjustment, that helps the body and facilitates the body in healing better and optimizing, and having that type of, that health?
That's a wonderful question. Wonderful question. I hear lots of chiropractors talk about correcting subluxation, and as if subluxation is a bad thing.
Right.
And that's the thing that there's a lot of confusion in the public, or in people generally.
Well, because that in and of itself is a reductionist, mechanistic,
Absolutely.
and allopathic way to look at things, because it's removing the subluxation, when actually the subluxation is the correction. The subluxation is the process of healing.
Subluxation is absolutely appropriate and perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think for me, sorry, Kelly, I didn't want to cut you off. Did you
No, I'm good. I'm very intrigued to hear how you're going to answer this, Sarah.
For me, the subluxation is opportunity. I don't think it's healing. I actually think it's a neutral territory where it is encapsulated with opportunity, and that opportunity can go one of two ways. It can go south, and we can view that as negative, or it can go north and we can view that as positive. But when you look at a magnet and you have a positive and you have a negative charge on that magnet, that you can't cut off the positive and only have the negative. So in other words, within any positive experience, there will be negative experience as well. Within a negative experience, there will be a positive experience as well. So I feel the opportunity provides us with this opportunity. And then it's up to us to interpret what that opportunity then is via the physical, the chemical, and the emotional, because that's how we create it. That's what Dee Dee said years and years and years and years and years ago about the subluxation, that there's the 3 T's that are involved with any subluxation that is created by the body. So I don't think subluxations are happening to us. Again, that's a non-self responsibility approach. Mm-hmm. I believe that we create our subluxations. We create it for the course correction of our life, be that a minor course correction or a major course correction. We have 3 different avenues by which we can create those subluxations, therefore create those opportunities, which are physical, chemical, and emotional, or thoughts, trauma, and toxins. And if we have, as chiropractors, are only looking at that one aspect of that subluxation, be that the physical, then we're missing 2 legs of that 3-legged stool. And so for us, that's why we look at the emotional aspect of the people's health challenge. That's why we look at the chemical component of someone's health challenge, and that's why we look at the physical component of that as well. So I think really the subluxations are created for the evolution of mankind, and if we start to see that we have that as a profession, the whole world is going to open up to, the whole population of the world, because no longer are we, necessarily taking someone's pain away. No longer is the subluxation the root of all evil in someone's body and making them sick. That is completely not my belief at all about the subluxation. I believe that we create it. I believe that we have an opportunity, and once we are back in that alignment of where our innate intelligence and our educated mind are aligned, then anything is possible. So we go from basically from a stored energy to a kinetic moving energy. And I think that's incredible when we start to take a 10,000-foot view of what the subluxation is, rather than a 500-foot view, where the 2 extremes of the views are very, very different.
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. That the word opportunity is something that you've introduced to us a long, long time ago, and it's something that we use all the time with parents in particular. Obviously, this is what the focus of this evening is with parents. So it's we often as parents feel that there's something wrong with the child if they their body's creating these recurrent colds, for example, and it's like this is an opportunity. It's about shifting our belief and understanding, and I suppose as a parent, our ownership for what we're responsible for, and shifting that actually that child has created that as an opportunity for themselves, for something magnificent to happen through them. So it's a different thought process. And it's not necessarily the easiest way to move forward, particularly with parenting, but it's once you have seen it, then it's very difficult to go back, because it makes perfect sense.
So I'll give you an example. This might help it. Hopefully it'll be a good example to share with you. Annam, our eldest, just recently, so he has been selected into the Auckland Rugby Academy, and he's been training there for a year now with them, which is great. The guys are all well older than him. They're all around the 20. This is the International Rugby Academy. They're all like 20, 26. Anyway, he's been training really hard. This year they didn't have a team on the island, so he got put into a pool. Auckland Rugby said, we'll send it out to all the schools to see if they want to pick up a number 10. Anyway, so one of the top-tiered rugby schools in New Zealand picked him up and said, come and play for us. Well, he's now playing for this school in town. He has been for a while, and there's our eldest boy is very structured. He knows what he wants. He understands rugby. And he's not afraid to communicate things if he wants to communicate them. So they have this. He has this team. He was invited into the leadership part of the team. There's 5 boys within this team of 20 odd into this leadership team. One of which, of course, is the captain of the team. Well, Annam was coming home from training, and he was starting to say some things about the captain. And we were obviously helping guide the conversation at dinner, and we just said, well, you need to have a voice, and you need to have some voice around it, so speak to him. All the rest of it goes, oh, no, I'm not too sure. And we just let him, we let him be the guide of that, with us being the guide at this end to help him guide that conversation. Anyway, so he kept coming home for a few weeks being frustrated with this guy, the captain, and then he went and played a match where he picked up his first injury, and at 15 he's not been injured before. He's had quite a good run through rugby, of course, great food, great conversations, and regularly adjusted obviously always helps, and picked up an injury, and it was to his shoulder. And so he came home that day, or we all came home that day from his game, and we spoke about his shoulder injury. And it was the supraspinatus, so the muscle, at the top of the shoulder. It wasn't on the side, it wasn't a deltoid or anything like that, but it was right on top. And so he started having the conversation, and he then started to use his words about the captain. And we said, so what is it with this guy that you're really challenged about at the moment? And he said, oh, it's just such a weight on my shoulders. Mm-hmm. And we were like, okay. And then he spoke with the captain and came back, had another conversation, and we said, okay, so what's going on with your shoulder now? And he said, it's a weight off my shoulders because now I've spoken to him, we're on the same page, he understands what I want to do as a 10, all the rest of it. So that's just a quick little example of how when we look at this vitalistic understanding of health, of this vitalistic understanding of life, then we see that there are these unforeseen forces that are helping to guide and control our physical reality. And here was this kid in this team, was frustrated with this captain, wasn't having a voice around it, then had a voice around it, then had that weight lifted off his shoulders. But in the meantime, because he wasn't listening to what he wanted to do and wasn't following his truth, which was really wanting to have the conversation, he created an injury that then spoke for him. So did that injury just happen to him? He was just in a bad place at the time in the game and got tackled? Well, from many perspectives, many people would see that is the case. However, from this vitalistic perspective, when we look at this innate understanding of the human body, when we look at the subluxation from the physical, the chemical, and the emotional, then we know that he created an opportunity for himself to get really clear on what he wanted to say, so he no longer had to carry the burden on his shoulders. But sometimes we have to get those knocks and create those knocks to actually take the life lesson and step forward.
Wow, that's a awesome example.
Brilliant example, Sarah.
Yeah. That is just like that just nails it right there. Wow, that is, that has to sink in, because that's just such a different way of looking at creating who you are, and all of your being and your body, emotionally, psychologically, physically. It's all created by your actions and your your intentions, and what you don't realize that you're holding in and suppressing, it's just all of that. I mean, it's incredible. I'm thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I just think it was a really clear example of, how when you're getting the knock, when you're getting that vitalistic knock in your life, as in the knock on the door, the vitalistic opportunity to speak your truth, when you don't, then nature will have a way of expressing that for you until you have that voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
and that comes through the opportunity which we create.
Yep.
Which then ties into that whole conversation we just had about the subluxation and is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? Or is it neutral? And it actually is the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's the opportunity. When any child creates what I call, Marianne, a health expression. So we don't call it sickness within our house. In our house, I call it health expression. I coined that term back before Anna was born, so 15, 16 years ago. And I wanted to have a congruent language that would be supportive of their creation of something within their life, as opposed to life happening to them. And so we use the word health expression. So when when I'll give you another example. When he was really young and we were moving to New Zealand, I know Kelly's heard this one before, and some of other people in your audience might have heard this. Anam created a health expression. He was writhing on his bed. I could hear him in his bedroom. So I got out, said to my husband, I'm just going to go up and check on Anam. I went up and checked on Anam, and I knelt down beside him, and I said to him, put my hand on his elbow, on his forearm, and I said, Anam, it's Mummy. What's going on? And he said, I don't know. Yes, you do, Anam. What's going on? So empowering them at every step of the way that they do know what's going on. And he paused and he said, well, clearly I created a health expression. And he was 5 years old at the time. And I said, good job, buddy, health expression. Well, what's going on? I don't know. Yes, you do. Is it physical, chemical, or emotional? And he said, it's physical. And I said, good, great job, buddy. Okay, health expression that you created. It's of the physical. What's the physical about? And again, there was the I don't know. Yes, we do. Yes, you do. What's it about? And he said, well, you know how you take me to the skate park? And I said, yes. And he goes, you know the ramp in the middle? I said, yes. And he goes, you know how I'm challenged getting down it? Yes. He goes, well, I think I'm going to grow after this health expression and I'm going to be able to get down the ramp. And I squeezed his forearm a little bit more, and I said, do you think or do you know? And he said, I know. And I said, great job, buddy. You've created a health expression. You're going to grow in your strength, and you're going to be able to get down that skate ramp. And I adjusted him, kissed him goodnight. And then within 2 days, he had got to the top of that ramp and he was down it. Wow. So and that's just a classic conversation that occurs in our house and the conversations we have with people in our community, that every step of the way through life, every day we have these, micro opportunities that can turn into macro opportunities. So he had created a health expression that gave him great strength. And I've always said that 10 days post any health expression that gets created by a child, you will see amazing changes. 10 days after that, you'll see amazing changes. And those changes can come in many, many, many different ways. And if you're not looking, you won't see. So they can come from dexterity, they can come from coordination changes, food changes, friends at school may change, their grades may change, the reading changes, etc., 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 etc. All the way through our adult life. We just have a lot more of these health expressions that get created when we're young because they give us the opportunity to grow. And then when we're older, we don't have as many of the health expressions, the smaller health expressions, because we've done a lot of that growing. But what we have and what we create are major health expressions from the accumulation of our lifestyle of ignoring what nature wants us to hear. And I think the more that we can, I know that the more that we can educate the public and children on this understanding of opportunity and change and difference, then I think humanity, or I know humanity, will be in a much better position going forward. Absolutely.
That's incredible.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that story.
So Kelly, I know I'm just very conscious of the time. This has been, I can't even, I'm going to be, I don't have any words right now because I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. This has been again, the hour has flown by. I just think that it's so true. It will shift humanity and contribute to just in such a profound way. If we can share this and continue to impact people's lives, by sharing and then Sarah, just continuing doing what you're doing, I think it's awesome. And Kelly, just how you're in practice, and I love everything that we're doing. So, and I could sit here and continue to talk with you guys. And more. So I just really appreciate both of you being here. It's just been a really awesome conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me too.
Well, any last comments, any last words, any advice for mothers, pregnant women, or how can they reach out to you if they have questions?
So my closing comment is more of a thank you, Marianne, for obviously setting up this podcast so more people can understand chiropractic, can understand parenting, and home education that we touched on last time on the last call. So thank you very much for providing this as an opportunity, not only for your own message for people, but for people like Kelly and myself to also get our message out and how we're making an impact on the world. So if people want to get in contact with me, they can go to the vitalmums.com, or they can just send me an email, and my private email is dr and then sarahfarrant@gmail.com. If they want to get in touch with me there, or they can go to Amazon and get The Health Illusion, which is my latest book, which goes into a little more detail of what we've just spoken about, and my first book, which is The Vital Truth. And both of them are from Amazon, and they drop out of all the different countries where you are. So if they want to read and take a bit more of a deeper dive.
That's great. Thank you.
But thank you thank you very much for having me. I've really appreciated.
Oh, you're
sharing.
welcome. I'm so honored to have you guys. And Kelly, how can anybody reach you?
Similar sort of private email is kjtchiro@hotmail.com, and I'd be very happy for people to email me, or you can reach me through Facebook. You search for me, the practice Dynamic Family Chiropractic. You can reach me through either of those. I'll get the messages that way as well. I'm very happy to speak with people. And again, just echoing Sarah's thoughts and what she's basically said. Thank you very much for the opportunity, because it's through things like this that the ripple effect happens. And for anybody that is listening who hasn't thought about chiropractic as a choice for them, I would just really encourage you to go and just see, because the sad thing that we hear frequently in the practice, I wish I'd come so much earlier, I wish I'd known this, why is nobody else telling me this? So I would love for people not to be in that situation, and for people to find out more about how they can help themselves with chiropractic, helping them along the way as well.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
I agree,
Kelly.
Yes, I definitely agree. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks very much, you guys, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. I love that conversation with Dr. Kelly and Dr. Sarah. We could have continued talking for hours. Next week, I'm speaking to Laura Martins, a theater actor from the London Phantom of the Opera. Be sure to tune in to hear her share about her experience in becoming a mother, including her miscarriage. It's a sensitive and emotional topic, and it's also very insightful. Be sure to subscribe, write a review, and share. I'd really, really appreciate it. I'm Dr. Marianne Shiozawa. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.